Let's talk about then when you completed your fellowship at the White House with the other fellows. What did you go and do?
Well, I stayed beyond the fellow year because there were, let me back up a second. Richard Nixon was a very complex personality, obviously, but if you look at the domestic policy initiatives he had, he was really one of the most progressive Republican or Democratic presidents you'd ever seen. He founded EPA. He laid the groundwork for ERISA, for pensions. He wound up with the first affirmative action program with the construction trades in Philadelphia. He was very involved in welfare reform. The welfare reform that actually passed under Bill Clinton was H.R. 1, was introduced by Richard Nixon back in 1970 through Pat Moynihan, who later was a U.S. Senator from New York, but at that time was Richard Nixon's, believe it or not, domestic policy advisor. And he also had a very progressive notion about Native American rights, and that related back to the fact that he had a college coach at Whittier in football who was Native American, and he believed that this guy should have been a Big Ten coach and was not a Big Ten coach because he was Native American and was discriminated against. That's a long, evolving way of saying that he took a great deal of interest in Native American rights, and one of the things he wanted to pursue was Alaska Native Lands Claims Act. And so I stayed and finished that up, and I left in June 1971, and I did something I said I never would do. I went to one of your competitors here. I went to Arnold & Porter, which was a great firm. I was number 67 when I got there. I don't know how many hundreds of people they are now. I did not like it. I loved the people, but I did not like law whatsoever at all. And they did everything they could to keep me, because again, there were very few women. There was Carolyn Ager, who was the wife of Supreme Court Justice Abe Fortas, and there was Nancy Mintz, who was a tax partner who died. But there were very, very few women. And to keep me, they put me full-time in pro bono. I think Arnold Porter was the first firm in the city that assigned a specific partner at associates to do pro bono full-time. I wound up in Charleston, West Virginia, on a case involving Buffalo Creek. I don't know if any of you remember this. A book was written about this by Jerry Stern, who went from Arnold Porter to be general counsel of Occidental. But this was Piston Coal Company. This was West Virginia Hollows. And the way they mined coal was they just sheared off the tops of these mountains, and they just piled the sludge, kind of creating their own mountains. Not any proper reinforcement or anything. And this tremendous rain came on for days and days and days, which they said was an act of God. And not surprisingly, the sludge went on these little hollows, and you had a sludge slide that killed 205 people. And I went down there and spent months interviewing people, the initial interviews, we agreed to represent them pro bono. At any rate, that kind of wiped me out, and I just said, okay, I like Arnold & Porter, and they did everything they could for me, but I just didn't want to do that.
What do you think it was that wasn't appealing to you? Because, I mean, law has a lot of components that are really complementary to you. You like to write, you're articulate, you're gifted at, explaining very complex situations. What is it you think that didn't resonate with you?
I think and this is going to seem inconsistent because they did put me in pro bono, but I knew I couldn't stay in pro bono forever. I think I wasn't interested in commercial law. I just was not interested. I was much more interested in dealing with policy issues than I was dealing with a client. I also was a little, I think, as I think about it, there were so few women there, or so few women in law firms around town, that I was tired of that. I didn't want to always be the only one, and I was, and always not being on a pedestal, but always having everybody look at you to see what you were doing. That can really be wearing after a while. And I said, I do not want to be the poster child anymore. So I went and became vice president of a women's college because that would, there were people that were just like us.
So after you left there, what was your next journey? And I know that, I know obviously you have no children or family life because of all that you've done in your life. So how many children do you have?
5. But
I think it's fascinating as you now put that in context to Bobby's story and the journey of all she's done. She has 5 children who are all very accomplished in their own right.
That was because I was an only child. I was determined I would not, that my quote only child would have lots of siblings to be with them. I became Vice President for Academic Affairs at Mount Vernon College, which was a women's college, which no longer exists. It is now, I'm on the board of GW, ironically, and GW bought the Mount Vernon campus. Send your kids to GW. It's a great place, and have them live on the Mount Vernon campus on Foxhole. But they interestingly enough were looking for someone that was not an academic, but had an advanced degree and had some management experience and could help them navigate the shoals of whether they should remain at women's college in an era when women's colleges were really under attack. This was 1973. Everybody was saying, you know, we all want to go to the Ivy League. We want to go to the co-ed schools. Women's colleges are passé. And the board did vote 21-20 to remain a women's college. It was really a landslide. And they voted to go they were a 2-year college and reviewed by many as a kind of finishing school, because for a while they also had a high school and then 2-year college and then just a 2-year college, and they voted to go 4 years, but just some very specific majors. We picked 4 majors: political science, early education, fashion design, and I can't remember the 4th. And a business one, separate from the fashion design, and they figured there was a niche market there.
And how did it fare out?
Applications went up. The quality of the applications went up. One of the really star, 2 really star students were Sissy Baker, who until recently was head of the Chicago Tribune, a Washington bureau, and Cynthia Steele Vance, who was a TV reporter for many years here on air on Channel 9, I believe. But the applications went up, the quality went up. Over the long term, they couldn't sustain it because they did not have an endowment, and the cost just got too much. They had one of the things I tried to do, which made me very unpopular, is I said that for this institution, tenure did not make a lot of sense, and I proposed, and the Board of Trustees voted on a system that was going to phase out tenure while grandfathering it for the people who presently already had it. We were denounced or censured, I think it was, by the American Association of University Professors, AAUP, but I think it was the right thing to do. But at any rate, they just could not economically make a go of it, and they stayed around. We formed a women's institute that Susan Tolshin chaired, who's a writer and a political scientist, and so that was unusual, and that kept it going for a while. We held the first anti-gridiron dinner. The gridiron today is, as you know, the newspaper world has a lot of different events, and one of them is the Gridiron Dinner, and you belong to the Gridiron Club, and it was only men, and the women reporters in town, including Helen Thomas, Eileen Shanahan, Peggy Simpson, a lot of names that are fairly old now, decided that they were going to try to crash the Gridiron Dinner. So one year they picketed, and at the in front of the Capitol Hilton, and it was very funny, all these women reporters, and they're very proper suits picketing, and after that didn't work, they decided to hold their own dinner, and so they held it. We held a carnival at Mount Vernon College, and so we did a lot of that. And then the next year, the Gridiron went co-ed. So we did a lot of fun things to try to keep the school very visible.
And look at this. I mean, when we talk about the history of what we're talking about today, and young women don't necessarily appreciate that the doors were closed many times to organization and events and things. Doors were closed to us. We were clothes. We dressed like men. Do you remember the suits? You dressed just like a man. It was a pantsuit. No. You had a pin on and everything. I mean, my husband used to go in and take my suit out. I think it was his, and mine was a 4 and his was like a 50. So it was a big difference. So he'd think I shrunk it. But I think you look at this and it tells you how, actually, because of the work that went before, more women enter college now than ever before, and more women enter college than men do today. It's a huge shift. And it's not that long when you talk about all the experiences we've seen in our lifetime. It's very, very interesting.
No, but my daughters, and probably many of your daughters, don't have much to compare that to. There's no baseline for them to analyze that because they have not really faced that.
Right. I think that's so true, and that's good. I mean, it is good. But it's really amazing when we think, for those of us who are where we are today, and share that experience.